燃え上がれガンダム。Hello and welcome to Weekly Suit Gundam, a special bonus mini podcast from the folks at Weekly Stuff Podcast. I am Sean Chapman.
And I'm Jonathan Lack.
And we are here to continue our wonderful journey through the world of Mobile Suit Gundam. Last episode, we talked about episodes 1 and 2 of Mobile Suit Gundam and covered sort of the beginning of the series, some of the history of mecha anime. Now we are going to dig our teeth deep into a good chunk of Mobile Suit Gundam, because we're talking about episodes 3 to 13, Jonathan.
Yes, so kind of the first quarter of the series here. We've got 3 more of these episodes where we're going to take episodes, in chunks that you have predetermined. Yes. And I will say, Sean, last night finished up, I was watching episode 13, and I got to the end of that episode, and I was like, I see why Sean chose to end it here for this installment, but boy, I feel very sad. I feel very disturbed. This show, it looks like a fun kiddie anime mecha show on the surface, but it is not that at all. It's really disturbing and depressing, and I am sad.
Yeah, no, it's so my methodology for it was, I think you can either end it at episode 11 where the Garma stuff is done, or for me, I think this first chunk of episodes is about Amuro's journey from being the reluctant kid who is forced into this situation out of desperation to someone who is now his personal identity is so attached to the white base and his role as the Gundam pilot, and he's so traumatized at this point that he makes the willful choice to stay on with the crew instead of going back to the life he had. And that, to me, is the overall arc that ties these first 13 episodes together, and why I chose coming home as the last one of this little bit.
Makes total sense to me, because again, it's where Amuro's character arc has come to a head. He has made a momentous decision in this episode, and I will say, it's like if in Star Wars Episode 4, when Luke Skywalker chose to go off with Obi-Wan to become a Jedi, it made you feel kind of sick inside. Instead of like, hey, this is a cool hero's journey, it's like, oh god, the world is so fucked up, war is bad, I hate everything, humanity is evil. That's how I felt.
Yes, and that is the core of Gundam. That is if you're getting that through Gundam, then that means Gundam is working on you.
It is definitely working. We should obviously say we already kind of did it, but there will be spoilers for all these episodes of Gundam. It is the 40th anniversary of this series, so if you're worried about that, I don't know what to tell you. But yes, we will be talking about all these episodes today. Sean, I guess I'll just say up front, I was very positive on the first we watched for the previous episode of this series, but that was just, the premiere. I wasn't sure where it was going to go. This is one of the best television series I have ever seen. I feel pretty comfortable saying that after 13 now, because, and by best television series, I don't just mean anime, I don't just mean half-hour shows, I just mean full-on one of the best TV series I've ever seen. I think the quality of the writing and the direction and the pace, the thematic clarity with which things go by, the economy with which the storytelling is delivered is truly next level great. And I am kind of flabbergasted by the end of every episode at just how good this is, and that, Gundam obviously is a very famous and iconic series. I still did not know what I was in for watching this particular anime series, and that's really amazing to me. I think it is something truly special. I've been going around looking at some of the different takes on this initial series online, and as you said last week, Sean, a lot of people kind of dismiss the original Mobile Suit Gundam. They maybe they're like, Zeta Gundam's the one everyone should watch because it's really dark and cool or whatever. But the original, some people say it's dated, or it's too episodic, or it's like more kid friendly, which none of that is true. But like, I think people really should give this show a chance if they haven't, whether you have any experience with anime or not. It's an amazing TV series, and I actually think, looking at it in comparison to the moment we are in American television today, is surprisingly instructive. And that's something I hope we can get into over the course of this series as well, because I think there's a lot of lessons about serialized and episodic storytelling that this show has that like people should just take to heart because it's really well done. So I just wanted to say all that as kind of my piece before we dive into wherever you kind of want to take this today.
Yeah, cool. I mean, yes, I agree with everything you said, because it's I think there's something where, particularly in the West, this show is so underestimated because, one, it never really gained any traction over here in that first wave of anime. Like, it was showed in Toonami in like 2000, 2001, which is after Gundam Wing. And I think that like audience was not in any way primed for what this show is, and so like it makes sense that people didn't kind of latch onto it. Also, the dub is extremely questionable. So
I had a question about that, because I saw a lot of comments talking about like the character of Amuro or the character of Char, and like they're describing them in ways that like that's not that character. Like someone said, yeah, Amuro, he's really geeky, he's really bitchy, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, he's not. That's not Amuro at all. What the hell are you guys talking about? And I think it goes without saying we're watching the original proper Japanese version, but it made me wonder, is the dub like a poor maybe representation of what this series is?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have not, like, I've only seen clips of the dub just because I was curious. I have not actually like watched the whole show that way, because even I'm not that manic about this kind of stuff. But yeah, like it's a very sort of average level English language dub, which is not something that I think it makes the show feel way more like it is just a Saturday morning cartoon, if you know what I mean, than this show in Japanese takes itself very, very seriously. And the voice acting communicates that so well. And yes, so I do think some of that is like the dubbing's not great. People were introduced it because I also think I don't think Mobile Suit Gundam is a great show for you if you're like 14 years old. I think if you're younger than that, it's good. I think if you're older than that, it's good. But that age range that Gundam Wing hits really hard for, I'm not sure if Mobile Suit Gundam is going to hit really hard for that specific age range as well. And so I think a lot of those factors meant that this show just kind of gets glossed over in the Western Gundam fandom in a way that in Japan, as far as I can tell, is not the case at all. But over here, it's just never kind of gotten the full respect and attention that obviously now both of us feel it really deserves, which has always frustrated me. And every time someone just says, just watch the movies and don't bother with the show, it's like I am currently locked into what feels like at this point a never-ending death march with Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones is fucking not good where I am.
Listen to our main podcast, the Weekly Stuff podcast, to hear more on that.
Yes, but I'm at the point where they just start deciding, fuck it, every Game of Thrones episode has to be like 90 minutes long now, and not one of them has justified that length at all. So, and Gundam being able to put together plots that feel like are 3 or 4 episodes of Game of Thrones worth of plot put into 22 minutes but paced perfectly just shows to you how artfully and skillfully this show is put together. And especially if you watch any other series, something like we talked about on the Weekly Stuff podcast, Armored Trooper Bottoms, which is another mecha show from around this period. Like, Mobile Suit Gundam has so much sense of pace to it that a lot of contemporary anime and Western animated series and TV shows just don't have. And it's something that it does so exceptionally well that all episodic media should take a lot of lessons from, because it's hard for me to think of any shows that do it better than Gundam does.
Absolutely. I also wanted to say on the point of dubbing this show, I don't care how good your dub is. The main 3 actors, if you look at the top 3 characters in Gundam, at least so far, that would be Amuro, Char, and Captain Bright, right?
Yes.
And those three are about as heavy a set of hitters as you are going to get. It's Toru Furuya, also famous for a lot of roles, but Yamcha in Dragon Ball is one of them.
Yeah.
You have Hirotaka Suzuoki as Bright, the late Hirotaka Suzuoki, who was in so many great things, also happened to be in Dragon Ball. He was Tenshin Han, the original voice of Tenshin Han. And then you have Shuichi Ikeda as Char, who we have talked about. You have waxed poetic about the brilliance of Ikeda-san in all sorts of medium, but including Persona 5, the recent video game, where he plays a pivotal role. Like, those three voices are just literally irreplaceable. And the performances each one of them is giving in this show is properly legendary. Like, it is like legendary work for a reason. And it's one of those instances where I'm like, there just shouldn't be a dub. Like you can't replace those voices. That's sacrilege.
No, yeah, obviously I agree that it's just like, I think this is this would be a very hard show to dub in the best of circumstances. But yeah, you have three really legendary voice actors who, for all three of whom, this is basically their first huge role in anime, since it's 1979. Anime was still a fairly young medium at this point, so they were coming in like, these young hotshots, and then after this would like rise to meteoric success, all three of them. But yes, let's start diving into some Gundam stuff. Before we talk about the episodes, there's two kind of world building points I want to talk about. There are things I kind of wanted to bring up last time, but realized the show had not quite talked about it yet. Because we need to talk about Minovsky particles.
I have questions.
Yes, they're saying Minovsky particles like 3 times every episode now, so now we get to talk about it. But then I also just want to point out something that is a really cool piece of world building in Gundam, which is the space colonies. There's a lot of research that went into the design of the space colonies in Gundam, and you can go look up some of that stuff of the actual like cylindrical design is based on different concepts that were popular and are still like feasible, and stuff like the rotation of the colonies is what allows you to have like a sort of pseudo artificial gravity living on the outer edge of the colony wall and that kind of stuff. So all of that is really well thought out. The other thing I think is just fucking awesome, and it kind of helps give you a sense of, especially when we eventually get back into space stuff in Gundam, like kind of how this is constructed, is all the space colonies are at things called Lagrange points, which are real things. And this was actually something I remember I studied in a Stars and Galaxies class I took back when I was like a freshman at Boulder, where Lagrange points are gravitational points that exist in any system that has 2 major gravitational bodies. So there are Lagrange points for like the Earth-Moon system, and there are Lagrange points for the Earth-Sun system, right? So if you think that the Earth revolves around the sun, there are 5 different points in the kind of around that orbit where the gravitational forces of both the Earth and the sun create areas that mean that any body at those Lagrange points are fixed relative to everything else in the system. So if you have something at Lagrange point 1, which is I think a little bit kind of, if you're looking like from the perspective of the sun, is a little bit behind the Earth, that means that as the Earth rotates around the sun, any object at Lagrange point 1 is going to be at that exact point relative to the Earth and the sun in that entire orbit all the time. And so there are 5 of those points. All the space colonies in Mobile Suit Gundam are situated at one of the Lagrange points, which means that you always know exactly where those space colonies are. So if you're like launching from Earth or you're heading towards Earth, if you know where Earth is, you know exactly where the space colonies are always going to be. And so it's a really smart little detail that tells you, and like Gundam is full of those kinds of little details, but that was one that when I realized that's what they were doing, because they kind of at some point show you a map of where some of the colonies are, it was like, holy shit, like they have really thought this out. And then also I think an important thing to note, because I see some people misunderstand this, is they talk about the sides. So the Principality of Zeon is from side 3. We start the show at side 7. The sides are not individual space colonies. They are clusters of space colonies that are all at the different Lagrange points. and some of them are doubled up. So some of them rotate around the Lagrange points in one direction if there are multiple sides at one point, and then some of them rotate around the other way. So there's a lot of like thought and care that goes into those kinds of kind of astronomical or astrophysical elements of how the show's put together. That is one of those things where Gundam is so much more of a hard sci-fi show than I had ever expected to be, and that I think most people, even people who are fans of Gundam, give it credit for being, because there is so much thought and care going into those kinds of details in terms of how they construct the world.
Absolutely. It's because I did not know that much about it. I've only watched 13 episodes. I have not, dived this deep into it, but you can just tell watching the series that the world extends beyond the frame in so many directions, and that even if you do not understand every piece of world building that is there so far, the creators of the show absolutely do. And I think that's a really important thing to the show's success, and also that it doesn't feel the need to spell all of this out for you every step of the way, which would kind of slow the plot down and also not make complete sense, because the characters would presumably understand this and not need to give you massive lore dumps, right?
Yeah.
Which is also a mistake I think a lot of modern sci-fi and fantasy can make, especially in a televised medium where maybe you have too much time on your hands. But yeah, I love hearing about that, and I am also excited to learn what the fuck Minovsky particles are, because they definitely haven't explained that.
So do you have any impression, Jonathan? Like what's your, if you had to try to explain to me what a Minovsky particle is or what it does, what would you say?
I feel like I noticed them coming up the most in the episode where they have to get through the Earth's atmosphere and try to get down to the surface, because they were talking about the Minovsky particles in relation to like atmospherics and things like that. I assume it's something that powers the ship and interacts with other space objects, and they have to be careful about them because, I don't know, like the warp drive on Star Trek or something, I assume they could become very volatile if misused. That's kind of what I'm getting out of it, but I'm not sure.
So that's kind of one part of, you're like hitting one part of the Minovsky particles, but the main point, which is not really important that you know exactly what it is. So one, like, they are part of, I think, how the beam technology in Gundam's supposed to work is. I mean, effectively what it is, and this is like stuff that is mostly talked about in other shows, like Gundam The Origin, that's kind of does some prequel stuff. They are particles that they're fictional, so there's no such thing as a Minovsky particle. Don't go to like university and think like, oh, all my subatomic particles, I've got like quarks and neutrinos and Minovsky particles, of course. The Higgs boson and the Minovsky, we all know about it. So it's one of those things in sci-fi. Like, I think we talk about this sometimes, often in relation to Element Zero for Mass Effect, of a really strong technique for science fiction is like pick one important thing that you just completely make up a bunch of bullshit about, and it's like, here's this one totally made up bullshit science thing that in no way actually exists, but this is the thing that a lot of the other elements of our sort of science fiction-y stuff hinge upon, and that if you accept this one like weird particle or whatever it is, the rest of the technology will start to make sense to you and why the world is the way it is. So the Minovsky particles are particles, fictional particles, that are like emitted by the sort of thermonuclear reactors that they use to power their ships and their mobile suits. And then I believe they also are what are like somehow they are used to make all the beam weaponry in Gundam. The main thing they do, though, and this is sort of waxed poetical about Char in, I think it's episode 4. It's when they're attacking Luna 2, and he like sneaks in, kind of does this kind of stealth attack with his ship. The reason he's able to do that is that Minovsky particles, when they create sort of like a field and there's a certain density of them, they disrupt like radio waves and microwaves, any kind of low frequency electromagnetic radiation, they disrupt. And so that means that radio communications and targeting systems and all of that kind of stuff in an area in like a dense Minovsky particle field are not going to work properly. And so that's why these ships that have these big beam cannons can't just sit like 500 miles away in space and shoot a weapon that fires at the speed of light with like, extreme precision and just destroy everything from that distance. Like, this is why they need mobile suits, is because all this technology is generating all these Minovsky particles, which means that anywhere there's a battle going on or there are large amounts of forces, you can't use remote targeting systems. You can't use radio like radar or anything like that. So you need to have a weapon that is powerful enough to destroy these ships, but is agile and sort of, has enough utility and kind of multi-purposeness to it that it can get in close, be very maneuverable. And also this means that people like Amuro and Char are mostly aiming basically by like eye and using minimal targeting systems to kind of help line things up, but they're mostly just like they're shooting a fucking gun using a camera and a big robot hand that has a finger that pulls the trigger. Like, it's replicating close combat human warfare as close as possible. And so that's kind of what the Minovsky particle conceit is you don't have the kind of extreme information and surveillance technologies that you would expect based on the technology they have, because, as Char says in episode 4, their like technology has come so far away around that like the tactics of warfare have actually regressed to the kinds of tactics used in like conventional naval warfare and like ground combat.
I do remember that speech, and I loved that moment from Char. That's a really good scene.
Yes, and so that's what the Minovsky particles are there for, is to kind of justify why you need this kind of technology, as opposed to just having big space cannons sitting around like firing super precise shots and that kind of stuff.
Or just taking it for granted that they get in giant robot suits.
Yes, exactly. But I do like that they come up with one little tiny thing that's like, oh, this is like our own justification for why the fuck would you build this weird giant like robot suit thing that in no way, like, if you have the technology to build that robot suit, you should be able to build things that would be way more efficient than those suits. But they came up with this cool thing that also then makes it so that being a mobile suit pilot is something that's really special because it's incredibly hard to do. So it creates that sense of being like, a fighter pilot in World War I or whatever, where it's like the technology is kind of shit. It's extremely dangerous. You have to be incredibly skilled to be able to do this at all and just not die immediately. And so that helps create that sense of like, these are like true ace pilots that like not just like no random person can just jump into the Gundam and pilot it and do anything. You have to have a significant degree of skill to be able to pilot one of those things.
Yes, absolutely. That's all really interesting. I like learning about that.
Yes, so that's our lesson for today. Let's move on to talking about the episodes. I think the easiest way to do this is probably chunk the episodes up, because we kind of have 3 chunks of episodes.
Well,
we have. Oh, do you have a?
I just wanted to say, before we get into like individual episode talk, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, now that we're into the show, what the kind of week-to-week experience of it is. Okay, because I think that's interesting, just talking about like, what do you get out of the show as a 25-minute experience, because it's different than a lot of long-running anime in that it is serialized in so much as the story continues week to week. But these episodes are really effective at being contained 25-minute experiences. And I've found that surprising and also pretty invigorating in how they make a lot of the same elements recurring each week continually interesting, Mm-hmm. Because it is fairly episodic and it is somewhat formulaic in so much as every episode has a fight, every episode has a military sortie of some sort, and Amuro is going to have to get in that. I don't think there's a single episode where Amuro is not in the Gundam yet, and I don't know if that ever changes.
I think he always gets into the... If there's anytime he doesn't, there's maybe one where he's in like the gun cannon but doesn't get into the Gundam. Like, there's no episode where Amuro does not fight someone in a machine.
Yes. And I think that sounds... If you just told me that at the outset, which you kind of did on the last episode of this, I was like, ooh, that sounds like that could get old pretty fast. And it doesn't, and I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, because the show is... Like, one thing I've been thinking about is that one of my favorite series of novels is the Aubrey Maturin series by Patrick O'Brian, also known as the Master and Commander books, because that's the name of the first book. Those are the naval warfare novels. They're set during the Napoleonic Wars, and it's 2 British naval officers, Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin. And Jack Aubrey is the captain of the ship, and Stephen Maturin is the surgeon, and they're best friends, and they have lots of adventures, and there's 20 of these books, and they're all fucking amazing. And part of what is so amazing about those books is that I think they have a really good kind of formula to them, which is it is a series of encounters on the sea where you follow this crew who feel very realistic in that they are competent, they're good at their jobs, but they are also humans with human failings and foibles. And they're navigating these tough naval situations and scenarios in really authentic technical detail. Like Patrick O'Brien is famed for how much knowledge about naval warfare he brought to it. And you have these battles that are really fascinating because they're really built in very realistic, granular naval strategy, which is to say it is not as flashy as some series that kind of just would go for maybe, you know, the spectacle of it. It's very much about the process, and that's very invigorating to me, at least. I really like that detail-oriented, kind of strategy-oriented naval warfare kind of stuff. And then between those sorties, you have these vivid characters to fall back on. And I think Gundam is the same thing, but in space. It's as ridiculous as like some of the images are with these giant, colorful robots fighting. It's that same attention to technical detail and strategy. Like, I think it's episode 3 or 4 where they go to Luna 2. And it's just,
4.
and they've just this big rock that they're trying to get around. And they realize, oh, Char is getting supplies over there. We could get a good hit off if we do this, this, and this. And it is this like little battle that takes place built on some good planning and strategy, and they're having to execute on that. Or the episode where it's about getting down to Earth. They're trying to cross the atmosphere of Earth, and Char has a plan to intercept them there because he knows the Gundam will encounter different gravity, and if he doesn't beat the Gundam, he's going to force them down onto the wrong continent. And there's just things like that where, like, I find the strategy side of it so interesting and invigorating, and it scratches that itch for me I get from naval warfare novels and things like that as well. Or like a really good Star Trek episode, like the original series does this a lot with encounters with like the Klingons and the Romulans in space. Things like that I find really interesting. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, is famous for this in how well it shows that kind of strategic side. And I think that's something that really fuels the show week to week, is they're really good at planning out those encounters. And the other side of that is that on either side of those encounters, they're really good at showing the effect it's having on the characters, particularly Amuro. But also, you know, kind of tracing for us, like Amuro we're following all the time, and he's got a pretty dark arc. You have Bright, who is, we don't know as well, but just following that pattern of like him trying to be the lead. He's very clearly a good leader. He was born to be a leader, but he's doing it a lot earlier than he ever anticipated, and that's interesting. And then Char, who is this wonderful mystery wrapped in an enigma of a character who has very mysterious motivations, and learning more about that each episode. So I feel like as episodic storytelling goes, it's got all the ingredients you need to make a good semi-formulaic show, because formulaic I think is used pejoratively, and it doesn't need to be. There's a quality to formulaic storytelling that can be very good if done right, and I think Mobile Suit Gundam knows how to leverage a formula and when to break a formula, and all of that really fascinates me as I watch these 13 episodes, because it's surprisingly fresh as you keep watching it.
Yeah, because they never make... So, because every episode has the battle. Like, it needs to have some sort of battle. But no two battles are ever the same. They always come up with, here's, like, an interesting wrinkle. Here's an interesting scenario. Like, it's very rare that it's just like they put out 3 Zakus, and we're just going to have the Gundam go out there and have the Gundam just fight the Zakus. Like, it's never just that. There's always, like, some other thing going on. They have some alternative objective. They're doing some sort of, like, sneak tactic or something like that. They're trying to get behind enemy lines. There's always a lot more going on. And then I also think what's important is that the show is formulaic, and it knows when to break the formula, because it is not like a Transformers or G.I. Joe or Thundercats or all those kinds of more like 80s cartoons that were popular over here, that have that, like, okay, every single episode He-Man is going to fight Skeletor, or one of Skeletor's henchmen. You know, like every single episode an Autobot is going to fight a Decepticon. In Gundam, we have sort of shifting scenarios, and this is where I think when you look at the episodes, you can kind of chunk them together, because the show knows when to move on from a particular kind of set of characters or plot points, because we have episodes 3, 4, and 5 that are all like them trying to get back to Earth. Amuro is sort of learning how to use the Gundam, and in all 3 of those episodes, Amuro fights Char in some capacity. Then we have episodes 6 through 11, and that's all the stuff on Earth with Garma. And there, they almost never fight Char directly because they're mostly fighting Garma. Garma's not really a Zaku pilot. He's mostly using other weapons. And then you have all the amazing intrigue between Char and Garma and all that stuff. But you're not, while Char is still in the show, it's not every single episode we just go and fight Char and here's a fight between the Gundam and Char's Red Zaku. You're mixing that up. And then now we have sort of, for this, if you chunk these episodes together, 12 and 13 are kind of like the epilogue and a teaser of what's to come, where, like, I will just go ahead and say, because I don't think it's really a spoiler, for the next batch of episodes that we'll watch, 14 to 25, Char is not really in those episodes. Like, he might pop up a little bit here and there, but he's not actively chasing the white base anymore. He's been demoted after all the shit with Garma's happened.
And I noticed, I think it's episode 13 is the first episode that doesn't have a single appearance by Char. He is in 1 through 12. He's not always in them prominently, but he's there, and he is, like, conspicuously absent in 13. I think the last time we saw him was in the bar, where he's drinking, but still has cool sunglasses on to block his face.
Yes. So Char will obviously come back, and he's a really major character, but the show knows that you can't just have Amuro and Char fight every single episode, because then that makes it that when Amuro and Char start fighting, it's really boring. So when you move away from that, and now we have new characters, like we'll talk about him a little bit when we get to episode 12, and for next chunk we have Ramba Ral, who's going to be a different Zeon commanding officer that they fight multiple times. So they know how to switch things up and change the scenarios. We're changing, like, setting constantly. We're going from space to Earth and moving around different areas of Earth, which we'll be on for a little bit. And so all of those things, I think, help keep that core formula structure of, we have the white base and our crew, they encounter some sort of problem, Amuro has to sortie in the Gundam and take care of it, and that's, you know, the core structure of almost every single episode. There's a couple of exceptions, like episode 13, that move away from that in some pretty significant ways, but generally that's what the backbone of almost every single episode. But they know that all the other pieces around that need to be shifted around in different ways to keep that formula interesting, and I think that's one of the main keys to keeping this really tight. Again, like 22-minute episodes. It's a really tight episodic structure, but it makes it way more exciting and way more fun for me to watch than watching like a 90-minute meandering whatever episode of something of a show like Game of Thrones that doesn't really know what it's doing. It just has good actors, a lot of money, and like really good production staff and directors and stuff. And
I've said this to you off the air, Sean, but it has this quality where this is not an anime I can sit down and binge. This is not one personally where I can sit down and watch 3 or 4 episodes. I've done, I think, most 2 at a time, because every episode is, I said this on Twitter, a full 3-course meal. Like, you get a full, like, serving of Gundam. You feel like you have seen a story, you have seen a chapter in these characters' lives, you have seen something progress, and when it's over, I usually need to, like, kind of sit with it, process it, because, again, as we talked about last week, the subject matter here is pretty heavy stuff, and even in lighter episodes, of which there are some here that, not lighter necessarily in that they're like, there's no like comedy built episodes so far, but there are ones that just don't get quite as into the weeds with the darkness of the show. Even then, like there's enough in terms of like how much strategy you see going on, how interesting the animation is. There's just things I feel like I need to take a step back from and process, and I view, and this is, to be clear, a quality of the show for me. This is not a drawback. It's something that I feel like I need to savor. If I, gorged myself on Gundam, I think I wouldn't like it as much. And that, it's a show that aired weekly. That's good. That's like, that means that this is kind of the rare anime where I think if you watched it week to week, you'd be perfectly satisfied. Where if you, there are shows I love, like, Dragon Ball, if you tried to watch that week to week, it'd be fucking torture. Like,
it was, yes. As someone who watched it week to week in the Toonami days, it was hard to watch it like that sometimes.
Or Dragon Ball Super when it was on Crunchyroll. I know you and me both just waited until there were chunks of episodes, or in my case, the whole series, because that's just, it's not a show that particularly works week to week. And that's fine. That's what that show is. But Gundam is really good, I feel like, at, if I were in 1979 and watching this week to week, I would be very excited every day it aired, but I would also feel satisfied for the week to come.
Yes, and that reminds me of something I should mention, because I know I said it on the Weekly Stuff podcast, but people might not have listened to that one, is last Weekly Suit Gundam episode, I said that I was only going to watch a couple of the episodes that, like, I was just going to pick out my favorites and watch those, because I did watch all the way through Mobile Suit Gundam for the second time a couple of months ago. And then that, very quickly, that just completely fell apart, where I think it was literally that night after we recorded that episode, I was like, man, Gundam's really good. I'm going to watch, fuck it, I'll just watch episode 3. I remember thinking episode 3 was good, and I watched that, and then I watched episode 4 that night, and I was like, I think I'm going to watch all the rest of these. Like, I think I'm just like, why not? Because especially since it makes it easier, since you're not binging it, I don't have to binge it. So that means that it's like, okay, yeah, like I'll just watch 1 or 2 episodes every other night. And it's like this, and it's something, it like speaks to the quality of Gundam that I can watch it again so soon after having watched it for a second time. And especially knowing that we're doing a podcast on it. So I'm like, look watching in a slightly different way, because I'm trying to pick out like, oh, this is something I want to mention, like here's a good scene, here's a good moment. I'm like so impressed by how much fun I'm still having watching the show so quickly after having just watched it, because I don't usually do that. I'm not the kind of person that just like watches The Office or something like that on repeat like my brother does. Like he has a couple of shows that he just watches over and over. That's not usually what I do. But that is what I will do for Gundam, because Gundam's really fucking good.
Because I will also say Gundam is a show I have to focus on. This is not a show I watch while I am having dinner, or if I'm going to be on my phone, or anything like that. And it's not just because it's subtitled and I'm reading it, and that, it's harder to look away. I don't want to look away. I don't want to focus on anything else. It's 25 minutes where I am just locked into the show. And, I think that's a fairly rare sensation these days, especially as I think a lot of shows are just built with more and more downtime in them for various reasons. And this is one where I want to appreciate the animation, which is unbelievably gorgeous for a weekly anime TV series. It's a little up and down, as every anime inevitably is, but even like, I think it's the episode where Isolina, it's like Isolina's Revenge, or so. It's Isolina Loves Remains. It's episode 11, yes. Which I just a fucking great title. I think it's that one where Garma's Fate, the one before it, you could tell had a lot put into the animation. Like Garma's Fate was like, they earmarked that one like, this is special. And then like Isolina Loves Remains has some pretty messy character animation in it. I noticed just some like off-model stuff, some like moments where they did not have full movement. But the backgrounds were still just like blowing my mind, because this show has really lovely, it's that very late 70s, early 80s, I think a lot of people associate this style with like the early works of Hayao Miyazaki, if you've seen that over here, but like this kind of almost watercolor-esque kind of backgrounds, where it is not as detailed as you think it is, but it gives such a good impression of detail, that's why you kind of miss it. There is some kind of eye candy on display in every episode, and again, there's a lot of weekly anime series where you would not say that about. So, that's something I'm focusing on. I'm appreciating the voice acting. The music is surprisingly good throughout.
Music's so good. Like most Gundam shows, that's something that like even some of the bad Gundam shows have really good soundtracks. They've always been really good about that, but this one in particular, there's some really good music in this show. In episode
13, Coming Home, when Amuro is dealing with the fallout of his mother getting mad at him for murdering a guy, the music there it tears your heart out. And it's a theme you've heard before. Like this is, as with most anime, it's a small set of music that you hear over and over again, but it is used in ways that constantly bring out new things in the music, I think. So just wanted to say all that too, of like, it's a show worth taking the time to focus on.
Absolutely. So let's dig into some of these episodes. As I was saying earlier, like I think probably the easiest way to do this is to chunk these episodes up. So for, I think, 3, 4, and 5, those are the episode where episode 3, Char is getting resupplied, and so the White Base decides to do a preemptive attack. Then episode 4 is them getting to Luna 2, and episode 5 is the atmospheric reentry episode, which is an episode so fucking cool that basically every single Gundam series post that episode, which is every Gundam series, I guess, because this is the first one, has to have the atmospheric reentry episode, because having mobile suits fight while they're trying to fight gravity and like get down to Earth is a really cool concept.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I was taking note as I was watching of like, I was trying to figure out what's the best episode in this batch. And I couldn't fucking tell you because there's so many good ones. But like 5 is one I noted as like, that's going to be hard to top. The re-entry to Earth episode. Then there's the one where I think it's called Winds of War. Yeah, it's episode 8. And it's where they have this little ceasefire. between the white base and the Zeon forces, and the white base decides to be tricky about it, and they put the Gundam in the little like transport pod, and it's really cool. And then there was Garma's Fate, and I'm like, they're not going to top Garma's Fate. That was the end of that episode is amazing. And then episode 13, and it's just like, oh my god. So like I would go like, 1, 5, 8, 10, 13, and I'm like, okay, well that's like half the episodes we've watched. They're all really good.
Yes, no, Gundam is really, really fucking good. So for one point I really love about episode 3, where they're attacking the resupply ship. There's a couple of things there I love. I love that you start to see that's where Amuro, because this is the first time that they are on the attack in any way. Like overall they're still on the run, but they take this moment to be like, oh, well shit, if he's getting resupplied, we need to disrupt that in some way or we're completely screwed, because the only reason why the white base survives this chunk of episodes is because Char has almost no supplies. He's got a handful of Zaku's, like no ammo, no backup or anything. And then once he does have access to resources, he's not committed to destroying the white base. He's just fucking around with Garma. So it's the only, if Char was like got the resources and was committed to defeating the white base for this whole chunk of episodes, they would have been dead in like episode 5 or something. So they decide to go on the offensive, and I like how that then shifts for Amuro in that episode. That's where he comes up with we shouldn't just go straight at them. Let's go around the side of the asteroid to come in so the sun is coming from behind us and do like a sneak attack that way. And it's the first time you see Amuro take the initiative like that, and he's still a rookie at this stuff, but he clearly is thinking about tactics, and he's thinking about like Amuro is a really, really smart guy, and so now he's applying the intelligence that he's only usually applied to mechanics to thinking about tactics and strategy. And when he does that, like he needs to gain a lot more experience at it, but you start to see how it's like, oh, he's not just some kid in the Gundam. Like he could be like the best soldier out here. Like he could eventually get to the level that he would be equal to Shard, not just because of the Gundam, but because of who he is. And this is where he starts taking that step, is in episode 3, and I like that a lot.
Absolutely. And episode 3 is where I realized this is a great naval novel in space, because and it's exactly the thing you talked about, where it is Amuro deciding we're going to go with the sun and we're going to stay on this trajectory. Every book about ships on the high seas has a scene about that. It is classic like naval tactics, and it is like, yes, this is so my jam. I fucking love it.
Yes, that episode also has the resupply officer guy who's just like, I love that guy. He's obviously died. He's one of the many Zaku or Zeon soldiers that gets killed at the end of the episode they feature in. But he's like so committed to like, no, Char, you're good. Like, this is the pride of the resupply corps. You are getting your Zakus. You're getting your food. Like, I don't care. Like, he jumps into what is a Zaku 1. So all the Zakus that we normally see are technically this like Zaku 2s. So they're like the updated model. He gets in like the original, like this big, bulky, shitty looking mobile suit. Is like with no weapon. He's like, no, like we're going to do this. He's like, I'm going to fend off this damn Earth Federation mobile suit. And of course, he has better moves than Amuro, but Amuro has the Gundam, so he just eviscerates that fucking dude. But he's very cool.
Now that we're talking about it, I'm going to throw episode 3 on my list of great episodes as well, because I agree. I had kind of forgotten about that. Partially because I didn't remember this was all the same episode. Episode 3 is such a big, meaty episode of Gundam. But yes, all of that stuff with the resupply ship and Char, Char is pretty, laissez-faire about all of this because he's got bigger plans. The white base is not his main concern in life. And so, he's like, no, we don't need to go this crazy with it, guys. And the resupply dude's like, no, we're going to the death. I will resupply your ship. And it is fantastic.
Yes, and that's something that's like a trend with all of these, is that in my memory, almost all of these episodes are like, oh yeah, they must have been on like Luna 2 for like 3 episodes in Gundam, right? Like that's because any modern anime series and like most post Gundam and Gundam shows, like if you watched Iron Blooded Orphans, like the most recent one, that would be like a 3 to 4 episode arc. Like that would not be in one episode, which is episode 4. They go to Luna 2. They meet up with, it's the first time they've met any other Earth Federation people. I think it's Commander Joaquin. He locks them up because most of them are civilians, and they have all seen like top secret Federation weapons that they're not supposed to see, so he throws them in the brig. Then Char launches a sneak attack. In the middle of the sneak attack, the power goes out, so the white base crew escapes. They get back onto the white base. Char does the coolest thing. Okay, the Char does a lot of this. Is not the coolest thing Char does, because I'm gonna need to catch my superlatives, because Char does a lot of really cool things. This is the episode where one of the command ships is leaving the hangar bay, and Char detonates explosives that cause the ship to spin sideways and get stuck in the hangar bay so nobody else can leave. And it's so cool. It's such a good bit of strategy. So it's like everybody is stuck there. Then the white base, they get walking on the white base. They decide to eviscerate that ship and blow it up with the white base's guns and use that opportunity to escape. All of that is in one fucking episode in 22 minutes, and they still have time in that episode to have a scene in the middle where they're all the white base crew, or I guess it's all the men because they separated out the men and the women. All the guys are in one cell, and Amuro is like drawing one of the Gundam circuits in his like mashed potatoes and talking to them about like, no, this is why the Gundam is so much better. It's got this learning computer. And it's like, it's an episode that has so much plot shit it has to do, and they still find this fun little moment to have Amuro show off who he is and explain the stuff both to the audience but also the other crew members around them. Like, episode 4 is not one of my favorite episodes of Gundam. It's a good one, but it is a good illustration of how this show is able to take, again, what, like in Game of Thrones, that would be 4 fucking episodes would be dealing with, oh, we got captured, and we get
that would be a whole
like
season
later.
That would be a whole season of Game of Thrones. For whatever character's story that was, you would go back for 5 episodes. They would be in their cell. Amuro drawing in his mashed potatoes would be a full-blown story arc. Yes,
and this just crams it all into 22 minutes, and it's fucking perfect.
It is fucking perfect, and that is one where I totally agree with you. They all feel like 3 or 4 episodes to me, because I remember you were talking about Luna 2 earlier just in this episode, and I'm like, they were at Luna 2 for like 5 episodes, right? And I'm like, no, that was episode 4, and I'm like, that was only episode 4? I watched this a week ago, Sean. Like, this is new to me, and it's like, yeah, that felt like... And that's what I mean when I say every episode is like a full 3-course meal. I think it was probably after episode 4 or 5 where I tweeted that, because 3, 4, and 5 are all big episodes of Gundam.
Yes, and this is the 3rd time I have seen Escape from Luna 2, and before I watched it, if you had asked me, I would have sworn there are 2 episodes on Luna 2. There has to be 2 episodes on Luna 2. There's no way that like they go to Luna 2 and escape Luna 2 in the same episode. That's impossible. It's like, nope. Like, this is the 3rd time I've watched it, and I always forget. It's like, no, like, that's all one fucking episode, but it's so jam-packed that it feels like it's 2 in your memory. It's cool.
Absolutely. And then anything more to say about episode 5, the re-entry to Earth?
It's just such a fucking cool episode. Just everything about that's like one of those good, like, hard sci-fi kind of episodes where they kind of cheated a little bit, where the Gundam has its like weird heat film, which is a technology
I love the heat film. It's like he pulls out fucking saran wrap. It's so good.
Post this episode, Gundam just sort of ignores that because it's like, because in Zeta Gundam they have another atmospheric reentry episode, and they just like never addressed that was a thing that the original Gundam had, because it's like, that's way too easy and convenient. Because obviously when they were making this, they didn't think that this was gonna be a franchise or anything. There's just like, fuck it, you have to come up with something.
It's the 5th episode. Yeah, they were not thinking long term.
Yes, so they kind of retcon away that weird heat film thing, but just the whole because you have the other Zaku pilot that's like going, and he's like, no, I'm going to get the Gundam, and then he goes too far and gets caught too deep into Earth's gravity well, and he burns up. Like, all of that is like, just the gravitational mechanics of it are so cool. That is also the episode where we get one of my favorite weird things in Mobile Suit Gundam, which is the Gundam Hammer, which is the big fucking flail thing that they launch out that the Gundam has, and he's using this, like, it's very dumb, and I think this is another thing. I think the movies kind of retcon away the Gundam Hammer, because Tomino was like the main sort of creative lead on the show. Is like, this is too super robot. I don't like it that much. But I love the idea of they just like made this big fucking like cast iron ball with massive spikes. And just because of the sheer size of the Gundam, something that's big and dumb like that is like, truly feels like a weapon of like just like true destruction and power. It's like, I'm just gonna swing this giant fucking ball around with my massive Gundam, and it's very cool.
I completely agree. As someone who loves giant, mace weaponry in like fantasy games, I was down for it. I love the Gundam hammer. I get why Tomino might have been later on like that's something we'll cut, but I love it. It's dumb and fun in an episode that is very smart. And like I also just think the kicker of that episode where they are against such long odds. Amuro very nearly dies because he has fucked up and not gone back to base when Bright is urging him, get back to base, get back to base. He only survives because of the heat film and his own wits. And, they have barely gotten out of these high... This is the closest Char comes in the early going to destroying them. And then Char is talking to Garma and is like, no, they're on the wrong continent. This was totally my plan. And it's like, oh, right, Char is a motherfucker. That was an amazing plan because he couldn't lose, basically, was his plan. Like, either way, I'm going to fuck these guys. And it is, and like kicking off that next phase of episodes where now they're on Earth, they got to where they're going. Whoops, wrong continent. Zeon controls this continent. That is such a great idea and such a great kicker to a really strong episode, I think.
Yes, and it's just the whole arc of these 3 episodes of we just got to get back to Earth. And there's this sense of, there's so much urgency and desperation, throughout this whole show, but particularly these episodes where they're so on the defensive, they're so just like on the run trying to get away from all of this stuff. And there's this sense of, once they get to Earth, they're part of the Earth Federation forces. That means that they can get resupplied, like maybe like all these civilians can get offloaded and stuff like that. And it'll be fine. Yeah, and then finding out that because Char is like an extremely experienced and brilliant military commander, he has had this whole other plan of, if I don't blow them up, I'm at least going to divert their trajectory enough to put them into our space so that we can keep on hitting them. And yeah, like that whole sense of, oh shit, you feel like the white base got a big win kind of the first time ever. And it's like, really, nope. It's your suffering is going to be prolonged, and they are still not like at Earth Federation forces. They are still on the run, even where we're at. So Char definitely fucked him on that one.
Absolutely, it is so good. And Sean, can you off the top of your head think of another TV show, anime, live action, whatever, that does more in its first 5 episodes than this one does?
No,
I'm racking my brain and like just. Those 5 episodes, because again, if you had quizzed me like when is the Earth re-entry, I would have said that's like episode 8 or 9, right? Even though I know full well Garma dies in 10, and I know it's not only 2 episodes of fighting with Garma, but just like my brain is skewered by this. Like I can't, that doesn't make sense that all that happens in 5 episodes, and that it works. Like that shouldn't work. That's too much. You would say objectively that's too much story, but they make it work, and that's amazing.
Yes, yeah, it's a really great stretch there of episodes, and again, the atmospheric reentry episode is so good that literally every other Gundam, I don't think it's absolutely every Gundam show. The vast majority of other Gundam shows just kind of copy that episode to do something slightly different with it. But yeah,
all right,
great stretch.
Before we move on to the next stretch, should we take a quick break?
Let's take a quick break, and let's get that show.
Okay, so Sean, this next stretch, the white base versus Garma. Before we get into all that, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm sure this was explained, but I feel like I missed it. Why is the white base called the Trojan Horse?
Okay, so this is one of the things I really love about this show is the sort of continuity of information. The Zeons have no fucking clue what the white base is actually called, because how would they? It's a secret Earth Federation military project. So the Trojan Horse, or Mokuba, which literally just means wooden horse, is just the Zeon code name for it.
Okay.
So that's the Zeon forces always call it the Trojan Horse. Not like that's not a reference to like the actual Trojan Horse of like, oh, it is a Trojan Horse that's like that military strategy concept. It's just, I think it's because it like has like I think it's like that big tower kind of has a vaguely like horse shaped head look to it. I think that's probably why they call it Mokuba. But yes, that's why. And so that's something fun to pay attention to. Like, it's not stuff that comes up till later, but it's fun to get that sense of like, oh, how much do the Zeon forces actually know about all the stuff that the Earth Federation people have? Because most shows just kind of either they just completely ignore it and because if it's a kid's show, they just like, somehow they know what it's called, like off screen, they just learned it, or they have some moment early on in the episode where that information is like exposed. But in this case, I like that they keep that like, nope, how the fuck would they know what the white base is called? They just have some weird code name for it. It just happens to be Mokuba.
Because they also don't know it's called a Gundam, right? You don't hear the Xeon people ever say the word Gundam. They're saying...
No, they call it the Earth Federation Mobile Suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that too. Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. There's like a certain connotation in the subtitles to using the term Trojan horse that is a little different. But yeah, I get that. Okay.
Yes.
It was interesting to me because... And it's also just like, it's a good entree into talking about the show because I feel like this is the stretch of episodes where you start to realize the show itself is quite the Trojan horse in terms of it comes in one appearance package, but it is a very different thing under the surface, as before we even get to episode 10, we're dealing with full-blown PTSD, people are dying, Amuro's killing a lot of people, and Char's got plans.
Yeah, so I think probably the easiest way, we can probably go back through and like pick out some moments from these episodes, but this is a big chunk, and I think it probably would be easier just to like, let's go through some of the characters and talk about kind of what they're doing in this chunk of episodes, and like because this is where we start getting a lot more character development kind of stuff. So yeah, let's talk about our Gundam boy, the boy in the death machine, Amuro Ray. Yeah, this is the stretch where he goes from like, I'm like fighting and I'm really desperate and I don't want to be doing this, to yes, he is having full breakdowns. He has PTSD. Like in the Core Fighters Escape episode 7, that's the one where he like launches from in the Core Fighter with like extra power and he just passes out in the cockpit, which is always just say like, oh Jesus Christ, that's a shocking like image to have. But yeah, like throughout this stretch of episodes, he's becoming more and more sort of frantic and sweaty and desperate until eventually, is it Fly Gundam is the episode where he's just like, no, fuck this. I just don't want to know. I'm just not going to go out. I'm not a soldier. This is not my job. Like, I get someone else to do it. Like, if you want to do it bright, you go do it. Someone else pilot this fucking thing. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it.
Absolutely. It is startling to see unfold. This is another place where I just fundamentally, some of the like reviews I've seen online for like the Blu-ray sets or recent re-releases of the show, people are like, yeah, Amuro, he's not that interesting. He's the stock character in a mecha anime who doesn't really want to pilot. He's reluctant to pilot, but he does it anyway. And I'm like, that is a horrible description of Amuro's character arc. It's not reluctance. He's actually very gung-ho about it when he's in the ship and like piloting it, and he is fully on board generally with like doing the job and getting it done right. He's very good at it and communicative, except when he's dealing with like full-blown PTSD which is extra startling to see in the year 1979 in an anime. Mm-hmm. Like, that is something I feel like we as a culture have only recently even had the words for, let alone shown like accurately on screen. And 1979, you just think about that, like that's before we even have Vietnam movies really that are doing this well. Like that's the year of the Deer Hunter. Like that's like America is just starting to figure out like, how the fuck do we talk about this? And this is like one of the best portraits of that I've ever seen, where he's having flashbacks, he's having night terrors. He is literally, it's in episode 9, it's not just he's angry and being like, fuck you, you do it. He cannot bring himself to make the motions to go do it. It is too hard. And it only really gets darker from there in episodes 12 and 13 after he watches Isolina kill herself and all this stuff goes down. It's a really amazing character arc. And we've got to talk about Toru Furuya. His performance is out of this world because I know him best as Yamcha in Dragon Ball. And he is great. Yamcha in Japanese is a phenomenal comic performance by Toru Furuya. And it's honestly only gotten better over the years as Yamcha has become less relevant. But the anime staff, in particular in Super and some of the movies, have found ways to put Yamcha back in. And Toru Furuya is like, this is great. The weight of the show is not on me at all. I just get to have fun. And he is such a fun actor in those episodes. I'm thinking particularly of the baseball episode of Dragon Ball Super. He's so funny. Amuro is not a funny performance, but it is so passionate. And like when he's dealing with stuff, like there's a raw quality to the voice acting here that like, this is one reason I don't think you could dub Gundam effectively is I've never seen an anime dub that does not have, at least in some places, a certain forced quality where you feel a disconnect between the actor and the character, in part just because it was animated for one language and voiced in another. There's that separation, but like, I feel like the voice Furuya gives it has such a direct line to the soul of this character. It's irreplaceable. And in episodes 9 and 12 is where I noticed it probably the most. And then 13, when he has the whole speech about his mother. We'll get there later, obviously, but like, what a performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's something just very raw. And it's true about a lot of the voice acting in this show in particular. And I think it's, like, because I've been, like, thinking about it and kind of, like, looking it up and looking at, writing about it in, like, different acting, like actors' sort of histories, is I feel like Mobile Suit Gundam as a show is at an interesting kind of inflection point in the history of voice acting in Japan, where it is, like, most... Because you can see this from a lot of the other actors on Mobile Suit Gundam, and you can see it from shows pre-Mobile Suit Gundam and a little bit post. Like, again, like Armored Trooper Bottoms is something I watched recently, so it's, like, in my head. And there are a couple of smaller actors from Mobile Suit Gundam, like the guy who plays Garma Zabi, has played a role in Bottoms and stuff, that is, like... it's like Japanese voice acting is not quite there yet in terms of like the style of it being slightly over the top, but also like the actors having a very clear, like, distinctive voice to them, just like the quality of their voice. Like Toru Furuya has a very distinctive, iconic voice. Nobody sounds like that guy. Like, he's the kind of guy that, like, you know, you can do impressions of because his voice is so distinctive and so strong. And a lot of the other, and that's how most voice acting in Japanese is now. Like any character, any random character will have that quality to them. And in Gundam, it's only a handful of actors are really like, who are these young actors that are going to become like standouts in what is going to become, you know, the anime industry as we know it, as that develops through the 80s, who are like Furuya and who are Ikeda, who are these guys who have these very distinctive voices and bring in that slightly over-the-top style that's, you know, that you would think of, but is also very raw and very emotional. And there's something also about, like, the actual audio recordings and, like, what has survived is a little bit degraded, where it's, like, the audio, like, peaks in ways and, like, kind of crackles in ways that are, like, technically deficiencies in the audio, but I think actually add to, like, the intensity of some of it. And there are like, a lot of Amuro's screams, and there's one once we get to the last stretch of episodes, there's a scream in particular that I'll want to point out. But in these episodes, like when Amuro is desperate and shouting and, like, you know, is in that mode, the audio, like, physically crackles in a way that the very clear high definition audio that's like a 5.1 mix that would be on a show you hear today just doesn't have that kind of quality to it. And there's something about it that I really, really love in this show.
Oh, absolutely. And when you're talking about, like, the over-the-top quality, I mean, this is also just a tradition of Japanese live-action acting.
Exactly.
That we're coming, you know, you look at, like, any Kurosawa movie, for instance, and, you know, there are all sorts of actors in those you would not accuse of being subtle, but they're phenomenal performances, right? Mm-hmm. You know, Toshiro Mifune is, like in Seven Samurai, it is one of the most over-the-top performances of all time. It is also one of the best 10 performances ever given in the medium of cinema. So, like, you know, and it's in competition with other Mifune performances of a similar style. So, like, I think there is something to that where, you know, just embracing a certain kind of acting, it does not have to necessarily be super realistic, but it has to be expressive and representational, and it does that phenomenally well.
Yes, and that's the quality that Amuro has. And because I'm 100% with you, I have never understood a lot of the Western fandom's sort of distaste for Amuro in some ways, because he's my favorite Gundam protagonist. I think there's Judo Ashita from Double Zeta is also very good. I mean, he's an interesting character, but there's something about Amuro. Amuro is because, you know, almost every single Gundam show, the protagonist is a teenage boy, because that's, you know, the genre, that's what they set up. Because also all the people being like, oh, he's just a stock, like, he's just one of those stock mecha protagonists that doesn't want to get in the mobile suit because has trauma or whatever. It's like, Amuro is the character that invented that fucking archetype. So, you know,
Yeah.
All those fucking Neon Genesis Evangelion motherfuckers, like, this did it first and it does it better. But yeah, so he sort of invents that archetype, but there is something that they do with it that is so much more natural and thoughtful, and he feels like a kid to me. Like, in most of the other, like, teenage protagonists in other Gundam shows, they don't quite feel like kids per se. Like Camille from Zeta Gundam, there are moments where I get what they're going for with him having this, like, adolescent qualities, but the actual acting and the character just never quite reads to me as, oh, this is someone who's like 15 or 16 years old. Amuro feels like a kid.
Yes.
Always to me. And that's one of the things that allows some of those moments in stuff like when he has his breakdowns in episode 9 or 12 and 13, they feel like really emotionally powerful because I think he communicates so much of the youth of this person. And that's both in the character design. I think they do a good job of making him look like a kid. And then Toru Furuya, in his performance, making him sound and feel like an actual adolescent dealing with things that he shouldn't have to deal with.
Yeah, a couple of notes on that. So Furuya was 25 when they did this show, so he was fairly young to begin with, but if you told me he was like 17 when he did this, I could believe it. He sounds that young. I also think I have to imagine, again, I have not heard the dub. The versions we're watching actually have it, so maybe I should switch the audio around and look at it sometime.
You can if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, not to like watch whole episodes, but just to feel, because I think it would be easy to look at Amuro and look at the scenario of the TV show and think, this is Luke Skywalker, or something like that, right? Like, that's the archetype, and he's nothing like Luke Skywalker. But if you give him a generic white boy voice, you know, from the West, and you put him on Saturday morning on Cartoon Network or something, I could see people like being like, this is a shitty version of Luke Skywalker, because I guess if that's your standard, yes, he is. This Luke Skywalker is a guy who sees his uncle and aunt who raised him burned alive in front of him and goes, all right, I'm going to go be a Jedi, and never thinks about it again. Yeah. And Amuro is someone who, you know, murders a bunch of people in a giant mech suit and then goes back and has night terrors about it and then doesn't want to fly again in the morning. And one of those is a much more challenging character type to watch and to digest. And I think it is interesting how much this show and Amuro in particular are working, I feel like, in opposition to the dominant archetypes of these kinds of young male protagonists. Like, this is not a Flash Gordon situation or a Star Wars or any of those kind of like older space serials that are obviously part of what got Mobile Suit Gundam greenlit in the first place, if we're being fully honest, right? Like,
oh yeah, like, it's, you know, there's no coincidence that there are beam sabers in Gundam, and this came out 2 years after the original Star Wars. Like, some of the influences are very clear.
They're very clear, but it's also like, what is he doing with those beam sabers? Like, the first time he ever uses one in episode 1, he accidentally cuts through like a nuclear reactor and blows up a fucking robot and kills a dude, and then he has to be like, I gotta be more careful when I kill the next dude, right? So like, I think that's part of it, is that Amuro is, he's not necessarily a character you love and admire in the way a lot of, I think, protagonists in this kind of media are. What you do is you empathize with him deeply on a human level, and I find that really compelling. Because a lot of the characters here are more, they're a little at a further distance. Amuro is the one you have a really dynamic human connection to in this show, and I think it's very smart that they decide to focus on one for that reason, and then everyone else you come to love, but in different ways and at a greater distance. But what they do with Amuro, I agree. I think it's really, I can't speak to like other Gundam shows, but I find him very compelling.
Yeah, I think he's so the heart of this show, and I think he represents what this show is, like, what the show is struggling with, like, very deliberately struggling with. This is not like a failure of the show in that it's struggling with this. It's that, like, this is a struggle that we all have, particularly in our, like, relationship to war and masculinity. Is there's these two coins of, like, on the one side, as Amuro continues to pilot the Gundam, gets in more battles, he improves, he gets more mature, he's sort of growing up, becoming more effective, more powerful, and becoming in his own way more empowered in sort of fits and starts. And there's something very invigorating to see Amuro be able to succeed in these really challenging scenarios, and him to learn from those experiences. And then at the same time, there's this constant understanding of these things that he's doing and the situation he is in is taking a toll on him that will never go away, right? That like this is changing him as a person fundamentally in a way he will never be able to shake off. He will never be able to go back to being the kind of person he was before he got into that mobile suit. He will always be dealing with these traumas for the rest of his life, and he's inflicting traumas on other people as well, which is one of the main points of that Isolina episode, is him realizing for the first time, oh shit, right, like this is someone who wants revenge on me personally because I killed the person. Like he doesn't know anything about her, but he knows he's killed a lot of people, and we know that he killed like the person that she loves the most in the world. And so we understand the reasons why he needs to be doing all the things he's doing. The things he's doing is creating trauma and creating more people creating more situations that are the kinds of situations that have made him the way he is now, and doing that to other people in the world as well. And so Gundam is always struggling between both of these things, of where you want to root for Amuro, you want Amuro to succeed because you like him and you want to see him survive and get better. And at the same time, you're always horrified by the cost that all of these things that he has to do actually is on him and the world around him. And that's, to me, the heart of Gundam.
Absolutely. And one of the many remarkable things about episode 13 is how definitively it feels like it closes the door to a certain kind of arc for that character, where if you at any point in the first 12 episodes thought this might be a series where Amuro defeats Char, saves the Federation, defeats Zeon, goes home, establishes a new home, marries Frau Bo, has a bunch of kids, and grows old and is happy, I feel like episode 13, without saying it, pretty much comes out and says, this is not going to go the way you think. That is not an option for this human being. That happy ending is just... And I'm saying this without future knowledge. I'm a first-time Gundam viewer. I could be totally wrong. But Sean, am I wrong? Is that actually how Gundam ends? Does he get super happy and have a family?
No comment. We'll see. We'll see when we get to the end of Mobile Suit Gundam and maybe beyond. Who knows?
Yeah, it just feels to me like it's telling you that is not an option anymore. When you talk about
I will say that Gundam at no point in Universal Century Gundam ever betrays those key themes. That's all I will say about the ending we will get.
Because I think another thing episode 13 is doing is when you talk about like how this series interrogates masculinity, I think is very interesting. With he kills a man in front of his mother because that guy would have killed him basically, and his mother is horrified and says, you weren't like this as a kid, you weren't like this as a kid. And he's like, I'm everything this world has told me to be. I am a soldier, I'm fighting for the Federation, like you're taking care of these refugees, I'm fighting the people who made them this way. And that disconnect between the mother who can't understand the boy who grew up to kill, and the boy who can't understand why the world that made him this way would react any other way. And there's things like that like I can't point to another piece of fiction that I've seen put its finger on that scale that effectively, I don't think, it's really dark, beautiful stuff.
Yeah. So Amuro, fantastic protagonist. Let's go to the other side of the fence and let's talk about
Char.
My boy, Char Aznable,
Char.
the Red Comet of Zeon. He's so good. This is one of my favorite stretches of Char in all of Gundam, is this where he is just fucking with Garma, and you don't know why he's doing, like, you're never quite sure like what his motivations are at this point because they have not been revealed to us. But he's just like manipulating this situation to the extreme, and he's just the biggest fucking slimy asshole. He's the worst, but he's the best at the same time.
Char is such a petty bitch, and I love him. He is such a petty bitch. Because at first you think his motivation is just, man, I failed a lot trying to fight that Gundam, so why don't I just reorient it and make everyone think Garma's the one failing, right? And that's kind of where you think it's going. It's just he's saving face. But then he's fucking with him in very specific ways where it's like, there's more to it than that, all the way up to episode 10, Garma's Fate, where he just full on, evil villain rips off the mask over the communicator and is like, you had the misfortune of being born to the wrong family. I got nothing against you personally, dude. I really hate your dad. Enjoy death. That's basically it. And it's like, oh, motherfucking shit. And we don't know, through episode 13 at least, what the hell Char has against the Zabi family. I have no idea about that. But, like, the way they pace out that reveal, where it's like, episodes 1 through 5, Char is the sexy, cool bad guy, and he's really talented and formidable. And then it's like, oh, Char's a really petty bitch. And it's like, Char is really... what the hell side is he on? And then it's like, oh shit, he just managed to bring down the heir to the royal family and create like an entire massive political incident in his own nation. And like the fallout of that, it's an amazing progression to see, mostly going on in the background of these episodes. It's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's one of the things that like I think, like, even if you know that Char, like, you hear, because, before I went and watched it the first time, I knew that Char was a big deal. I knew that he was in other stuff than just this show. There's a show, or there's a movie called Char's Counterattack. You know that he's around in different ways, so he's got to be really important. But, like, the first time you start watching it, you just have no context for how he's like, oh, yeah, he's a really cool villain. I like him a lot. He's got a great presence. But it's hard to understand, like, why would he be this big deal? And then you start getting that, like, oh, there's way more to this character than just he's, like, the really cool bad guy that's, like, the general on the other side of the fence. He's not just, like, the Megatron or the Skeletor or the whatever, like, the capital V villain of the show that is just going to be there every single episode to thwart your heroes. He's got way more shit going on, and that slow pullback of, oh, fuck, yeah, he's not just fucking with Garma for, like, to maybe try to rise up in the ranks to make himself look better. He just straight up gets this fucking pretty boy killed because he hates the Zabis that much, and he's going to send a radio communication telling him, like, if you're going to resent anything, resent your family. And he's just like, and I'm glad you're dead, and ha 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 ha. And just like laugh. And it's not even just like a normal evil laugh. I love this about Ikeda's performances. He's not just like, he doesn't have a generic villain voice or anything like that. So when he laughs, it's just this like legitimate, like, he's just really happy about this. He's really, really stoked about fucking pretty boy, the Bochama, Garma getting fucking killed. And he's just gonna laugh in his face.
That's actually something really amazing about Ikeda's performance on the whole, actually, is that, because you had hyped this guy up to me, and I've heard Ikeda, and he's in everything, right?
Yes.
So I've heard him somewhere along the line, but, like, I was not playing the Japanese version of Persona 5. I was playing the English dub. But you were telling me, like, oh, this guy is what's the character's name in Persona 5?
Shido.
Yeah, Shido. It's like, he's this Ikeda dude, and he was Char in Mobile Suit, and it's so great. And I listened to some clips, and I'm like, oh, that is a really good performance. But I guess I still didn't know what to expect when I got to actually watch Mobile Suit Gundam. But I probably expected a more generic villain voice, because that's just in my head. You're like, he's a great villain. There's this kind of a vision of that in my head. And he doesn't. When we met Char, I'm like, oh, that's Char. That's not what I expected at all. But this is good. And, like, as you go through the episodes, you realize he's just, part of it is he's just fucking funny. Like, it's a good comic performance on top of also being menacing and all these other things and mysterious and whatnot. Like, I actually think it's a very smart part of the entire Garma arc is that there's a lot of dark stuff going on with Amuro and Captain Bright and the ship and, like, all the refugees who want to get off and all of that. So when we cut to Char, that's kind of when the show is letting the pressure off a little bit, because the Char scenes are just fun. It is fun to watch Char fuck mercilessly with this completely hapless pretty boy who is only there because his dad is at this point we don't even actually know that his dad is the leader of Zeon. They do a really good job of holding that reveal for us to make it clear just how deeply Char has fucked with his entire country. Like, it's amazing. But, like, you go to those scenes and, like, he's unplugging the little communicator and putting dirt in it so it'll get fucked up and he won't be able to communicate with Garma. And it's like, it's a pretty brilliant way to kind of let the pressure off while also building up who I assume is going to be our ultimate antagonist in this show, in a way that makes him seem even more formidable because you see just how smart and cunning he is. But that also allows those are the fun moments in these early episodes.
Absolutely. And just every scene with Char and Garma is so just delectable. I love it's early on. It's when he gets back to Char gets back to Earth for the first time. And I think it's actually the first scene they have together where Char's like in the shower and Garma comes into the room. It's like all of that is so good. It's just so you just don't see it anywhere else really in Gundam. Just like this, like that kind of weird sort of political manipulation, and like I'm just going to get in really close with this guy, and like Char is just so charming that of course Garma's going to think that they're old buddies, and like if you actually one of my favorite Gundam things is the Gundam The Origin prequel movies. One of those movies is entirely Char and Garma in the military academy together.
Yes.
And it's so good. It's so good. And like their whole relationship of Garma being this hapless idiot who just kind of buys into Char's charm and thinks that Char is just like, you know, going to respect the chain of command and all these kinds of things. And Char using every single one of those things at every moment to the utmost effectiveness to just slowly push this pretty boy to his eventual demise. It's so fun.
It's so fun because every time he does something to fuck over Garma, it actually makes Garma trust him more. Like that's the way he does it, is he always makes it out like, I'm helping you, I'm doing something to like further your cause. It's like, and Garma's like, that's huge of you. You don't want credit for it? It's like, no, you take the credit, Garma. I'm okay. I don't need any more credit. And then he gets in his you know, his mobile suit and he's like, all right, let's fuck this guy up. And it's delicious. It's amazing. And I think on the flip side, we just need to talk about Garma for a second too, who is a short-lived character, but an amazing like part of the mythos here, I think, of kind of our first view of the Zabi royal family, who we don't even really know is a royal family yet strictly in the canon of just these episodes going forward linearly, but is such a great foil to Char. I love the character design on Garma because they also design him in such a way where like the voice and the character design looks like he is destined to be a longer term player than he actually is. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's part of the great bait and switch of that character.
Yeah, and I just love he's always playing with his hair, and he clearly thinks very highly of himself, but he hasn't ever actually earned anything that he's got because he, as Char just repeatedly calls him like that spoiled rich kid is sort of what our subtitles translated as. In that quality to Garma does, and then when eventually you have the pullout of, Garma Zabi, he's part of the ruling family of Zeon, which is the Zabi family. This is kind of what they are these like very extremely rich, kind of Baroque aristocrats, and Garma's like the nice, cute, young one who seems like he's very clearly well-meaning. Like Garma's never like cruel. He's never malicious. He's not sadistic. He's not evil in the way that Char, when Char's fucking with him, Char feels evil. Garma just feels like he was kind of born on the wrong side of this war, and if he had been born and he wasn't a Zabi, he might have been a totally nice dude.
Yeah, Garma's not gonna go out and commit a war crime. It doesn't feel like, right?
Exactly.
Like, yes. I feel like if he captured the white base, that would be much better for the white base than if they were captured by Char. You know? Yes.
Yeah, but Garma's a spoiled rich kid, and he's a Zabi, so he's got to go, and you're gonna laugh as he goes down in flames. And
then
let's
talk
just
about just the Garma's Fate episode.
Oh, okay, yeah. You want to dig into that one
just for a second? I mean, it's interesting because the first half of that episode is pretty stock Gundam up to this point, at least, in that they're gonna have another fight, and we're kind of angling for that and everything, and then. It is, because isn't that the one where they hide in the baseball stadium and everything?
Yes. So that's the episode where they're in some like destroyed old city. Yeah. And the white base goes and backs up into this old bombed out baseball like dome stadium. So the white base is mostly covered, and they're trying to hide from Garma's fleet as they're trying to escape.
Yes. And Char figures it out immediately, and that's a theme through all of this, is that like Bright is a really good military commander. He's coming up consistently with good ideas, but Char is better, and he sees them every step of the way. And Bright doesn't know it, but kind of the only reason they're surviving is because Char doesn't care about them yet. He's more concerned with beating Garma. And basically Char just sets it all up so that he tricks Garma to come out on the wrong side, exactly where he knows, like, he basically manipulates the situation so Bright's plan will work better than Bright could have ever imagined, and the white base just rains hell upon him. And the final moments of that episode with Garma, like, deciding to do a kamikaze run, basically, and shouting, you know, for the glory of the Principality of Zeon as he goes to his fiery death, and just after Char has given him the speech over the mic we were talking about earlier, I rewound that scene like 2 times. I had to watch it several times in a row. It is so electric and amazing. I even texted you. It was like midnight. I'm like, holy fucking shit, Sean, this episode.
Yeah, I believe that you texted me that, like, shortly after I went to sleep. So I woke up in the morning and saw, like, oh, yep, Jonathan's full in on the Gundam train. This is great. Yeah, Garma's Fate is one of my most favorite episodes of Gundam. Like, just, like, aesthetically, it looks so good because it's so distinct from most episodes of Gundam, being in this, like, it's at night, they're in this bombed out city. I love all the stuff on the bridge of the white base. It's like nighttime lighting, so it's got like this soft blue look to it, and them backing in. I mean, just all like the look of the white base backing up into that bombed out dome is so cool, and it gives you the sense of like the toll that this war has had on the Earth. Because then you also just get some really good urban warfare with Amuro in the Gundam, and he's shooting Zaku's through buildings and stuff like that as he's fighting Char and Char's men. But yes, the finale of that episode of Garma doing the kamikaze attack. I mean, just Bright being able to just shout out like "Fire all the cannons!" and blowing just the big Gao to bits that Garma is in, and then Garma going in for kamikaze attack. I love Bright shouting like "Emergency takeoff!" and like the white base is trying to go up as fast as it can as the Ga explodes in the air, and then the remnants crash into the ground, and it's this gigantic explosion. All of that, because also that whole end scene of the kamikaze attack and all of that is happening as the sun is beginning to rise over the horizon, so the soft blue color palette starts to become like sort of pink and purple. It's just all of it's so good. It's got
and I mentioned
such
this
a strong
earlier.
Sense of aesthetic.
Yes, and because I mentioned this earlier that this looks like an episode they blew a bunch of money on, and like they tagged it like we're gonna put everything into this particular basket early on because the episodes on either side of it are well done but not as impressive. And yeah, it's for good reason, because it's another one of those episodes that just pretty clearly signals that you are not watching what you think maybe you were watching when you first saw the theme song or something, and they're all happily running in a line, Moe agare, Moe. Yeah. It's nope, this is a different kind of show.
Yeah, because Garma seems like he's like this really important character, and he's only around for 5 episodes. He's dead after 5 episodes.
So what character did you want to talk about next?
Because let's just kind of roll through the white base crew, because I particularly want to hear your impressions of them, because as you said earlier, we don't have like as much access to them. Like we're a bit of at a distance from them, but we've had some time to meet all of our white base friends. So
I like all of them. I do. I think there's a question about how Frau Bo is used, and I'm curious if that character deepens at all, because she's basically there to make tea for Amuro and comfort him when he comes back. And I think it's an interesting role, and I think it has some interesting elements of like what emotional labor she is doing on the ship, because it's not like that's the only role for a woman on this show. There are all sorts of women on the ship doing very active things, including the pilot. Sayla is the one at comms.
Yeah, she's on communications. Mirai is the helmswoman. Yeah.
And I love Mirai and Sayla. They're awesome. And Frau Bo, I think, I'm curious to see where she goes. But I love Ryu, who's the other guy who like gets in the Gundams sometimes. And he's just, he's a cool fat dude. I like him. But Kai has quickly become one of my favorite characters, where he was that sarcastic little asshole they met on side 7 when they were escaping, and he becomes like one of the other lead Gundam pilots, and he is not the most reliable person, but he's quickly becoming like a kind of invaluable member of the crew, and he's just got this attitude, and I like him. I like keeping an eye on him because you never quite know what you're going to get from him.
Yes, and I like, particularly early on, he's one of those characters that will just kind of needle Bright and Amuro and just kind of put in these little like kind of jabs at them. And then that eventually gets one of my favorite scenes. I forget which episode it is, but at the end of one of the episodes, Kai just sort of offhandedly throws some sort of comment at Amuro, and Amuro just explodes at him. And it's just like, who the hell do you think you are? Like, you're some adult. Like, because Kai is probably, I mean, he's not an adult, but he's probably like 19 or 20 or something. And most of the people on the ship are like 15 or 16 years old at this point. It's just like, what the hell are you doing? And just like Amuro getting to vent at him is a really good little moment.
It is. But yeah, I like I think it's a really good cast of characters. Again, it's not like they all get like their own standout episodes, at least so far, but I don't think they need to. I think what it does is it fleshes out this crew where everyone feels like they have a distinct personality, set of talents, role in the show, and when the white base is doing good work, you understand why, because these are people who are amateurs, but they're competent and hardworking, and I like watching them all work together and become a crew. Which they were not in episode 1. They didn't even all know each other necessarily. So, yeah, I like all that.
Yeah, they're all very good. I like them a lot. There's a couple you missed. So you missed the orphans.
I love the orphans, the three little
Kika,
kids.
Cats, and Let's. They're some of my favorite. Like, they're the only comic, like really comic relief. Like, Kai kind of can have a comic relief role sometimes, but they're the comic relief on the show. And it's like, the most Gundam thing in the world is having the comic relief characters secretly be the most tragic characters on the show, because they're all like 4-year-old kids that are stuck on this like military base in the middle of this war, and their parents are dead. And they're like, you know, they're responsible for doing like dishes and just like swabbing the deck and all that kind of, like, they're doing sort of like basic menial roles on the ship. Although you don't ever get the sense that like people are forcing them to do that. They've elected to do that themselves. But that element of, they are very funny. I love Kika, who's the girl, she's like the main one who has most of the lines. But then like secretly, like, every once in a while they'll have a scene and they'll be like, oh god, this is horrifying that these little kids are on this death warship. This is sad.
Yes, I love them. My favorite scene with them so far might actually be one that is not particularly funny. It's in episode 12 or 13 where they come onto the bridge and they're gonna like swab the decks basically, and they're playing, and it's a tense moment, and Bright just shouts at them like, this is not the moment, get out of here, and they all start to cry. And it's also a phenomenal little character moment for Bright, who I think realizes, because that's one of the arcs I feel like Bright has over this course of episodes, is realizing he is this is a military scenario, but he does not have actual soldiers on this ship, and he has to figure out how to modulate his leadership to work with the people he has and not the people he wants. And that's one of those moments where, because it's with the little comic relief kids, but it works really well. And that to me is like, if those 3 little kids were just there for laughs, they would probably be annoying. But that they are there for laughs, and they also serve a thematic function, and they reflect interesting things in the other characters, that's what makes them valuable and allows them to be funny. It allows you to have those laughs kind of guilt-free in a way, you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. They're I love every scene the War Orphans have in the show, because as you said, they serve both the comic relief function, they serve a thematic function, and then they do allow, like, show different sides, particularly of Amuro and Bright, because they also have a couple of good interactions with Amuro in some of these episodes. Like, there's that one where like, it's just a little brief moment where Kika, Cats, and Let's are all in like the kitchen area, and they steal like a tomato, and then they're running through the hallways like having fun and laughing, and then Kika runs up to Amuro with like the tomato behind her back and says, "I have a present for you," and holds it out. And it's like, there's a nice little warm moments the show gets to have that I think those characters help facilitate. And again, it's something that's always super impressive to me, that this show has so much going on in every single episode, and they still have little time to do little tiny character scenes like that, that are not like strictly necessary for the plot, but do so much to flesh out what we're watching.
Absolutely.
Those characters are great.
But so those are the orphans, but they're not the iron-blooded orphans, right?
No, the Iron-Blooded Orphans are they're the orphans that run the PMC on Mars in the show Iron-Blooded Orphans. That
Okay.
they are also very tragic. Yes,
Well, they're orphans. It's hard not to be a tragic orphan at some point.
It's true. Yeah, it's a pretty sort of like ready-made tragedy right there for you.
There's a reason why like that word is just like synonymous with sadness.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. And are there any other members of the crew other than Bright we haven't talked about?
And then there's also Hayato, who he's the probably like the most sort of whatever. Like he doesn't have a lot of, and this is true throughout like basically this whole show. Is that they don't do that much with Hayato. He's like the short kid with like the really disproportionately big head. Actually, I think my favorite Hayato moment in all of Mobile Suit Gundam is probably we have seen it. It's very brief. There's like a 3-second clip at the beginning of episode 13 where Hayato and Ryu are like on the beach in Giz, and Hayato, like there's a small character details that Hayato trained in judo, and he says that I think in episode 2, and he like gets this good judo throw on Ryu. Again, it's like 3 seconds at the beginning of that episode. I'm like, that's a cool moment. I just like seeing these characters interact that way.
I noted that, and you know, that beginning scene in episode 13 I actually liked, and I could have used more of even of them kind of on the beach, because I liked those characters and I liked seeing them literally and figuratively with their hair down, you know.
Yes.
And off the bridge. It was an off duty. But no, I like the crew. But I really want to talk about Captain Bright because he's so cool.
Yes, so then go ahead. Let's talk about Captain Bright.
It's so good. He's a great character. He is a character who I think reveals a lot of, if not, I don't know if depth is the right word, but a lot of shading through just kind of being who he is and being there on the bridge, doing the job every day. And I like that. And I like that, again, you get this sense that, like, this guy was totally a born leader. He was always kind of meant to do something like this, but he is really young for it, and he does not have like the requisite crew he would necessarily need, but he is doing the best with what he has, and I like him for that. I also like the moments when I think you get a sense that he's still figuring it out. Like, he is not perfect in his dealings with Amuro, and I think just like in the episodes where Amuro is more reluctant, just pushing him like, no, you have to do this, shut up, get on the bridge, like, that's the wrong way to deal with it. And I think he knows that, but I don't think he knows what the hell the right way is, because I don't know who would know. And but I like the character. And Hirotaka Suzuoki, who died young. He died like when he was 50, which sucks. They've had to replace Tenshin Han on DBZ, and it's never been the same, because I really liked Suzuoki. But I think it's a great vocal performance too. And I already am just at the point where, like, it's like the captain of a Star Trek show or something. I just like seeing that dude on the bridge. You feel like you're in good hands.
Yeah, Captain Bright is great. Like, he's, you know, because like one of the sort of standards that Mobile Suit Gundam sets for the franchise is this structure of you have your ace pilot who is like your number one protagonist, but then you have your number two protagonist is the captain of whatever the ship is, and Captain Bright kind of sets up that role, like archetype that, like, not just Gundam, but like lots of other mech shows use that as well. And yeah, he's so interesting because he has both that, like, you get that sense that he is really good at what he does. Like, he's shockingly good at what he does, given that he's relatively inexperienced. He obviously is way more experienced than anybody else on the ship, because everybody else is like basically civilian, but he still is not, he's not really truly a commanding officer, but he's slowly kind of getting used to that role and kind of learning how to be a commander, but not knowing how to deal with all the pressures of it. And it is that whenever you get to see those little cracks in Bright's armor are so meaningful to me. Like, I think it's episode 12. You have a very quick, I think it's right after that scene where he yells at the kids, and then he goes back to his quarters, and then a little bit, and he like sits down on a chair, unbuttons his shirt, and kind of leans back for a second, and then Mirai runs in because some like news of, I think, of what of the Ramba Rao's forces are coming in, and so she runs in to let him know, and he immediately sits up back up and buttons his shirt up again, and it's like little character details like that he has, that he, you know, has to hide so much behind the military regulation and the uniform and all of that because he's so young. Like, one that like really, there's something very authentic that speaks to me so well, of the like having to hide behind these superfluous things to like kind of bolster yourself up. But it's also at this point as a character, he does not know how to be soft and still be able to be in command, even though that's the thing he needs to be able to do to command people that are not people that are soldiers, that are not just going to follow orders because you tell them to, because that's not the life that these people have led.
Yeah, it's not the life they chose either. But yeah, it's you really you just feel for the dude because it's the world's shittiest assignment, right? Like he did not sign up for this. He did not pick this mission. It is an absolute, crapshoot where he can do his absolute best and they're still alive, mostly because Char was fucking with Garma. Like there's things like that. And thank God that ship has Captain Bright, because anyone less good at this, they would be dead in the water. But like it is one of the interesting nuances of the show, and I feel like that character is coming into his own more in terms of like us understanding him as a person with each passing episode. And I'm very excited to like revisit this next time we do this and feel like what more do I know about Bright now, because I feel like I've gleaned. If I went from like I didn't even honestly, Sean, last time we did this Weekly Suit Gundam, after episodes 1 and 2, and you kept saying Captain Bright, I wasn't 100% sure who you were talking about. Out of like the mess of characters we had met, there were so many of them. I think I know. I'm like, okay, he's the young military guy who's kind of like de facto in charge, but I wouldn't have been able to like draw you a picture of him or something. Like I totally can picture him in my head now, and I think that just speaks to how clearly they've moved everything forward.
Yeah, and I think it's like so much to the show's credit that I feel like in a lesser show, Captain Bright would be a really bad character, like a character you'd hate because he's always pushing and like just pushing Amuro to the point where you have in Fly Gundam episode 9, he straight up slaps Amuro in what is like a very sort of like iconic scene where Amuro collapses and says, "You hit me. I've never even been hit by my father." This is like a sort of famous line from the show. And like that character archetype, if you didn't see all those other elements of him, you'd just be like so frustrated and annoyed. It's like, why does the guy in charge always have to just be a fucking asshole? Because they're always an asshole in these kinds of shows. And here they like give you enough like a peek behind the curtain enough with Bright to see like, oh, this is why in those scenes he's an asshole. You like, I don't agree with what he's doing, but I always understand why he's pushing Amuro in the way he's pushing him, because Bright doesn't have the capacity to do anything better at this point.
Yeah, and I don't even think he's an asshole. Like even in that moment, like I don't agree with him hitting Amuro, but like I don't know what the hell I'd do because they need that fucking Gundam out there or they're all dead. So like it's a series of impossible choices that he is navigating as a competent but still fallible human. So, yeah. Any other major characters to hit?
I think that's all for the characters, but there's like for this stretch of episodes, there is like, they're not a character, but there's like a group of characters of the refugees that are a pretty significant subplot here. In particular, I wanted, because that's a good additional pressure I like that the White Base is constantly dealing with in this stretch of episodes, Garma and Char attacking them from the outside, but also the unrest among the refugees on the inside of the ship that are like, they're constantly trying to get out. And then that's where you get Winds of War, episode 8, which is both for you and me one of our favorite episodes. And in particular with that episode, the whole subplot of the young mother with her son who just want to get off on Earth, and they have like this town that her husband grew up in, her husband who's presumably died on Side 7, and she wants to raise her son there. And so she kind of helps lead that one of the excursions of the refugees to be like, okay, let's actually like unload a bunch of these people. They want to get off here. And then they craft the whole sort of military sort of like decoy and like diversion strategy that we already talked about earlier. But that whole sequence of the mother kind of walking away, and you have the other Xeon pilots that are sort of monitoring the situation, and that guy is the one guy who's like the main pilot has this line about like, let's go back and help them out. And the other guy's like, no, why? Like, Garma is going to get mad at us. And he says, well, a young man like Garma would never understand the feelings of a family man like us. And
those characters, those two characters and their relationship with the mother is what makes me love that episode. There's other really good stuff in the episode, like the whole trick with the Gundam, but like it is those two characters. It is giving more humanity than we have seen so far to the Xeon forces. Having that relationship with them, showing that you've got all these refugees they're not taking sides, they don't give a shit, they're just trying to survive. And then the kicker of that episode is Amuro shoots them down and they live, which you could almost argue is like slightly a cop-out for how dark this show gets, but I'm glad they lived, because I don't know if I could have kept watching if Amuro murdered those two people. But
Yes.
like, it is, and that by the end of that episode, for that young mother, Amuro's not the hero of that episode at all. And I think there's things like, just the way it complicates all of that. Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah. And then that episode also has like the classic Gundam ending where Mobile Suit Gundam just, some of these episodes have just like the best like last like 10 or 15 seconds. They're so strong. And that one ends with those pilots finding the mother again and them saying like just offhand like, oh yeah, this used to be like St. Elmo's or whatever, like whatever the town name was, like, oh yeah, this area used to be this town, St. whatever. And they kind of like, it was like, well, good luck, and walk away. And then the mother collapses to the ground, realizing like, oh, this place she was trying to get to is literally just a giant crater, because that's how devastating this war has been. And that's all throughout that episode, because also earlier in that episode, there's like a brief moment when they're flying over a lake and they're looking at a map and like, the fuck is this lake? And someone looks over and is like, I don't think that's a lake. I think that's just like a bomb crater. It's like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh, that's like the lake that we're looking for is the one over there. And it's those little moments where you realize just like the real toll that this war has had on the people and on the actual like Earth itself, in the geography of the Earth has actually changed because technology has gotten to the point where that's how devastating warfare can be, is really striking.
Yeah, absolutely. Great episode.
Great episode. I also want to talk briefly about the ending of episode 11, Icelina Love's Remains, because that's, God, all that of where Icelina stands up on the top of the ship pointing a gun at Amuro as Amuro is like out trying to fix the Gundam, and then she trips she like faints and falls because she's been injured in the crash. Like right after she says like I'm gonna get revenge, and I was like, revenge on me? Who? What are you talking about?
I was not sure how to read that scene in a good way. It's a great scene, but like she's pointing the gun at Amuro, she's gonna shoot him. He is defenseless, and then the gun, she points it in the air and falls. And I read that as either like she passed out or she just committed suicide, like, and didn't want to kill him. I wasn't sure what we were supposed to read out of that.
Yeah, my reading of that has always been that she's, because, you know, she was like the Gao had just crashed, and that one other Zeon sort of guy officer that was one of Garma's men dies in that crash. So to me, the implication is like she's really badly injured.
Yeah,
she climbs up there and then like finally kind of succumbs. Faints and falls off and dies, and she probably would have shot Amuro if she had you know, more strength left in her to survive that crash.
Right, but it's a beautiful scene. Again, that episode has more simplistic and sometimes off-model character work, but the backgrounds in that one, those like purple skies and everything, it's such a dynamic scene. Also, just because of the staging, that she's on this destroyed ship. Amuro is. We don't see Amuro outside the Gundam much like that, where like we see the Gundam in scale, and he looks so small next to it, and he's so defenseless. Amazing moment, and then it ends with them burying her body and not even knowing who she was. Like,
yeah,
good God, that's because I remember when I watched Garma's Fate, they have the next episode preview, and I'm like, oh, an episode where Icelina goes, that sounds kind of redundant, right? You know what I mean? Like, that sounds like that could be kind of a filler episode. And it's not. It's a really valuable half hour of Gundam, as I should just be trained for by now. And poor Amuro.
Yeah, like that image. That's one of those like those like final images where like kind of zooms all the way out, and then like the style of the image kind of changes to this more painterly look, which they do sometimes. And that one where they're all standing over her grave right after Amuro just says, "I wonder who she was." Like that's a moment that like it has always stuck with me really hard in Mobile Suit Gundam. Yeah, it's
absolutely
a good fucking
show. And then we've got the last two episodes, 12 and 13. 12 is kind of a down one. It's mostly it's about the Zabi family, who we have not seen a lot of yet. And then it is also an introduction to Ramba Ray, who Ramba Ral, sorry, who I assume. It's Amuro Ray Ramba Ral. Okay. I assume, as you've said, will be an upcoming villain. It's kind of like a preview of him.
Yes, yeah. He's going to be a big character in the next chunk of episodes we get.
Yeah. I do love all the stuff with the Zabi family here because there's a different version of this show that could have just started episode 1 with a giant info dump about here's the Zabi family, here's who they are, here's what they want to do, all of that. But they don't, and we don't even learn there is this big royal family really until Garma is dead. Char has revealed that he wants revenge for some reason against the Zabi family, and then it's like... and part of that is just to hold the reveal of what a major thing Char has done, but also I feel like it's a good way of like keeping us in the middle of this conflict that is so immediate and not pulling out until a good 10 episodes in is a really interesting strategy, and I think it works really well. And I like in 11 and 12, you see like 12 has the whole funeral for Garma, and there's the big speech that I think Giren, whatever his name is, Giren makes, and they're all listening to that. It's there's some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, it's really good. Like I love because the first time it zooms out to like, oh, this is the Zabi family is at the end of Garma's fate, where I think the last moment of that episode is it cuts to Degwin Zabi, who's like the patriarch of the family, but is old and like isn't really in power. Giren is the one who's actually in power. But so Degwin, who's Garma's father, he's sitting on his throne with this big cane, and then there's a messenger there, and he stands up and drops his cane, and the narrator has some great line, and it's like it's said that when Degwin Zabi heard the news, he dropped his cane fell that day or whatever it is. It's like the weird poetic line. And then, yes, so then you get to see a better sense of what the Zabi family is, which is they're like sort of space Nazis, because you get the whole Sig Zeon scene. That's also a scene, the Sig Zeon thing, which is a pretty iconic scene from Gundam. That's another place where I think Bright gets a really good moment, where everybody else is just standing there speechless, listening to this thing and kind of terrified of like seeing the scope of who their enemy is, which is the line that Amuro has, is like, this is our enemy. But then also that kind of military dictatorship, like they're all unified and angry, and Giren is this like Hitler-esque figure who's giving this big sort of fascistic speech, and Bright is the only one who stands up and says, shut the fuck up, like, you hypocrite, like, you are not fighting for freedom, you're fighting for a Zabi family-led dictatorship. Like, we know what the Zabi family is like, we know what your policies are, like, you're not fighting for the liberation of anybody, you're just fighting for yourself. And I like that he's the only person there who seems to have enough knowledge of like the political landscape, and also is like, he has to kind of like stand there and kind of be a figurehead for the other people under his command, and she's like, no, like, we're fighting for this, like, they are the enemy, like, they are wrong.
Absolutely. And he also has the moment where they're all trying to turn away, and he says, no, watch this.
Yes.
Like, look at this, look at what we're up against. Because there's also just the sense in that of like, you know, the reveal of the Zabi family on one hand shows us what a monumental thing Char has done. It also shows us what monumental shit the White Base is in, because like they killed the Prince of Zeon. Like they're fucked. They're up against some shit here. And in episode 12, they've already got a new crew coming after them. So like it's a big deal, and it makes me excited for what comes next. But then episode 13, I think of every episode we've watched so far, Sean, had the biggest effect on me. Because
it's my personal favorite episode of Gundam.
Okay,
so,
damn.
Episode 13's really fucking good.
Yeah, it's it's Amuro goes home. He tries to find his mother. His mother is at this refugee camp. They meet. It's a warm moment until two Zeon officers come in looking for him. He shoots them from under the bed sheets, and then has this huge break with his mother. And then goes out in the Gundam and kind of indiscriminately destroys an entire enemy base for no good reason. Mm-hmm. It's I like, it was like midnight, and I didn't, because it's dark outside, and at night in Iowa we have a million bugs out there. But I kind of felt like I needed to go take a walk around the neighborhood of like, oh my god, or like go take a shower or something and just be like, I'm unclean. That was so dark, but brilliant.
Yeah, the first time I watched that coming home, that was the episode where I was like, well, shit, like, I'm not just going to watch this show, I'm going to watch all of this like franchise, because it hit me so hard. Like, it's so meticulously well constructed, because it shows so much. Like, there's so much going on in that episode, because that episode also has the whole scene where Amuro goes back to his childhood home that he hasn't seen since he was like 4 years old or something. And I love the little glimpses you get of little boy Amuro. He's so cute. But he has his childhood home, which has basically been confiscated by these drunk soldiers, Earth Federation soldiers, who have been left behind by command, because, you know, like, everything is just in tatters at this point with the war. And so they have just sort of taken over, and they're abusing the people in this village. Like, those one soldiers steal the apple from the mother of one of Amuro's childhood friends. And there's this sense of, like, this show is not a show that's just like, there are good guys and bad guys. And this is where you get a very clear sense of that, of war has a lot of consequences on a big scale, but also on small scales, like the one we get to see here in Coming Home, which is the kind of thing that is usually glossed over in this kind of stuff, because you usually just see the big battles and move on, because that's what the show is about. And visiting this small village, that there's no big fight going on here, there's nothing of importance going on here. Like, they're in such an out of the way backwater area of Earth that is of no military importance, that the white base gets to just kind of have a leave day, basically, which we've never seen before. But, like, the war still affects that as much as anywhere else, and it's like you cannot escape the consequences of what's going on here. And that element of, like, introducing us to it that way, then I think sets up everything in this episode to feel that much more complicated, and like, you as a viewer, like, this is not an episode that I think you just have, like, an easy takeaway of how to feel about it, because it's deep, like, struggling and juggling all these different kinds of emotions and ideas all packed into this really tight 20 minutes.
Absolutely. I think every beat of it is amazing. You know, there's, like you said, the scene with the apple where they drop the coin and Amuro fights them. He gets in a fist fight with these guys who are ostensibly on his own side over it. That's amazing. The whole construction of the sequence where he kills the guy in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And that part of what is so disturbing is you get the sense that he wasn't even aware he pulled the trigger. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he's shocked that he did it. It's the first time we have seen Amuro, not the Gundam, kill someone. Which, yeah. I know the Gundam is him, but there is also there's an inherent... Amuro is shocked by it, that there's a difference there to it, you know? It's not being in a big suit and shooting someone else in a big suit. He shot a dude, and he injured another guy, and he has to live with that. His mother is horrified, essentially disowns him, the way they talk, and Amuro being unable to understand what has happened and basically falling back more hard than ever on his mission in the Gundam and as a member of the White Base crew. It's so heavy, and it is so raw, and it is so real about what war can do to a person, especially a kid. You could almost end the series here, because it's like, it's such a grand thematic statement. I'm almost worried to watch more of it, because that is such a dark... And to do it in episode 13 of a 43-episode show, like, it makes a pretty clear flag-planting statement about where we're going. Because, you know, you have an episode called Coming Home after 12 episodes of hell getting back to Earth. You think that's going to be the nice, happy episode where everyone gets to go see their family. And it is so resolutely not what that is. Because that's what I was expecting. I knew the one we were finishing on, Sean, was called Coming Home. I was kind of praying, like, I want these characters to have a happy moment. That's what I want to see. And it's not. Again, this isn't me criticizing the show. This is me praising it. But it's also like, it makes me actively almost anxious about watching more.
Yeah, because the show's not... It's not about just, like, you know, giving simple, happy resolutions to these kinds of stories, because... Again, like Gundam is about the consequences of war, and this is the episode that, to me, like, symbolizes that more than anything. Right? It has everything. It has the consequences of war, on masculinity, on adolescence, and on technology, and, like, the intersection of all those things. And that, to me, is, like, the primary concern of Gundam as a franchise. Generally speaking, is tackling the question of all those things put together in different ways, right? Like, that's why you have a show that's called Iron-Blooded Orphans, because, like, every show has to be about the way that all those things interact, and one of the ways that war and adolescence interact is that war creates orphans who grow up without parents and have to deal with those consequences. And Amuro himself is, like, kind of orphaned twice by this war, and that the war tears him away from his mother, because that's why Tam Ray has to go leave, is because rising tensions with the Zeons. He's an engineer. He's working for the Earth Federation. He's going to design this weapon. And then also when he comes home after all of that, the war orphans him again, because at this point he's been pushed so far as a soldier, he cannot reestablish that relationship with his mom, because his mom is someone who... I think his mom is someone who either can't see or doesn't care about the war as a big scale problem. She only cares about it as this small scale thing right in front of her. So that's why she's working at like a refugee camp and helping people that way. But when she sees that Amuro is actively contributing and fighting in the war, even if he's fighting for the right side, she can't accept that personally. And so that, like, those differences means that Amuro has to be estranged again and has to lose his familiar relationships again. But the darkest thing about it all is that he actively makes that choice. And that's the thing at the end of this episode. As I said, like, Gundam episodes, a great Gundam episode always comes together in those last final moments where Amuro is on the beach with his mom at sunset. Like, Gundam just has such a great use of color in these kinds of moments. Captain Bright comes walking up from the white base, like all soldierly and professional. They animate Bright so well in this scene of like he's taking like, you know, like standing up straight and like very, very prim and proper. You know, he does the whole like sort of like full like 100-degree, 80-degree kind of spin turn thing that soldiers do. And you know, and Bright, while Bright was just criticizing Amuro about like purposelessly destroying this whole Zeon base, he's still praising Amuro in front of his mom, like rightfully so, because Amuro has saved all their lives. But Amuro just makes this choice very coldly to say, no, I'm not going to go back with you, Mom. I'm going to stay on this white base. Like, I'm going to continue to fight. And Bright explicitly gives him the choice to stay, and Amuro chooses not to. And that moment to me is so powerful and again, like, I have such mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand I'm like, yes, Amuro, like, stay, you should stay here, build a new life, don't go out and fight, like, don't do all this stuff. And at the same time, you know that he needs to, you know that, like, even if the Earth Federation is not perfect, they are better than what we have seen from the Zeon stuff, especially after episode 12, and you know that all these people that we care about on the white base will probably die if Amuro's not there. And so those conflicting emotions, which to me reflect like my real world conflicting emotions about the military and about war in our world as well, in like this episode in 20 minutes captures all of that. And then they pack it, you know, they pack that final fucking gut punch in there right at the very end with that scene.
Absolutely. Anything else to say about this batch of episodes?
It's really good, man. Gundam's so good, Jonathan. It's
so good. I wanted to share something. Last week, I kind of teased. There's a lot of writing I've studied by Hayao Miyazaki, the famous artist, obviously, not involved in Gundam, but active during the time of Gundam. And I just said he's got a couple great quotes on Mecha, and I thought as a way to that was a very dark discussion we just had about coming home. So maybe as a way to palate cleanse, I just wanted to read a little bit of this, because this is interesting to me, because he's writing, this first quote I'm going to read is from 1979. So Gundam would either be airing or it would not have aired yet. Either way, Miyazaki probably had not seen it. I mean,
that would have been before Gundam had gained its popularity, which would have been like the early 80s.
Right. So, okay. This is again from 1979. He says, in Japan today, animated TV shows filled with all kinds of fancy robot-like mechanical creations are all the rage. I have certainly drawn lots of mecha or mechanical things myself. But the general theme of currently popular shows seems to be that the protagonist jumps in a giant machine he couldn't possibly have created on his own, battles the enemy in it, and then boasts about winning. I frankly hate these kind of shows. I don't care what types of robots are featured. For me, in a truly successful mecha show, the protagonist should struggle to build his own machine, he should fix it when it breaks down, and he should have to operate it himself. One, that is just a phenomenal, grumpy Miyazaki quote. Mm-hmm. I love it when Miyazaki is just grumpy, which he has been since the 70s. Basically since he started being in public life.
Yeah.
And it's also actually kind of a great tee-up for Gundam, honestly, because he's talking about super robot shows, right?
Yes, yeah.
And And I feel like Gundam actually is addressing a lot of the things he's talking about in really sly, interesting ways. Like, you know, Amuro did not build the Gundam, but his skill is that he knows how to operate it and fix it and all these things. Like, I think Miyazaki would very much approve of the moment where the Gundam breaks down in episode 11 and he has to get out with a fucking screwdriver and try to fix it.
Exactly, yeah. Like, because that's always some of the best moments in Gundam as, like, a franchise are when the mobile suits or the mecha feel like real mechanical things and not like big magic fantasy suits of armor that they basically wear. But it's like, no, like, this part of it broke down. I have to get out with a fucking wrench and, like, tighten this bolt or, like, whatever it is to get this thing to work again. Yes, that seems to be what Miyazaki wanted, and Gundam gives it to you.
Yes. And then this next one I want to read. This is a slightly longer quote, but I think it's really interesting in terms of what he describes here. I think is the core push and pull dilemma at the heart of Mecha that I think Mobile Suit Gundam is consumed with. And I think it's another way I would be like, I've never heard Miyazaki talk about Gundam. I feel like if he saw this series, at least he'd like it. This is from July 1980, so Gundam would have aired by now. Again, he might not. It wasn't popular yet. But this is, he says, in animation these days, vehicles are often referred to as mecha, and it has become increasingly common for mecha designers to focus obsessively on their external appearance and functionality. I believe this fascination with mecha is often stimulated by an unconscious orientation toward all things powerful and strong. Not only that, I think those who create these images of vehicles are consciously trying to stimulate the same fascination among those who consume them. Now, I have to admit that ever since I was a child, I too have been a fan of military planes, warships, and tanks. In fact, I grew up being very excited about war films and drawing military things all over the place. I was an overly self-conscious boy, and I had a hard time holding my own in fights with others, but my classmates eventually accepted me because I was good at drawing. I expressed my own desire for power by drawing airplanes with sleek and pointed noses and battleships with huge guns, and I found myself thrilled by the bravery of sailors who, even as their burning ships sank, continued to fire their guns until the bitter end by the men who plunged into the hail of fire and flak spewed forth by an enemy formation's guns. It was only much later that I realized that in reality these men had desperately wanted to live and had been forced to die in vain. That paragraph has the same kind of kicker as a Gundam episode. Of like, yeah. Because, I mean, and this is interesting if you look at the course of Miyazaki's career, because he has always been a very obsessive artist of military aircraft and things like that, particularly airplanes, and he's a brilliant artist at it. And if you look at his work from around this time on, like, Lupin the Third, Future Boy Conan, up to Nausicaä in 1984, there's a lot of that in there that will remind you, I think, of Gundam. But I think he's dealing with the same kind of push and pull that the show is, and that I think Gundam is very self-aware of, like, the power fantasy that allows this show and this genre to exist, and what those ideas actually mean. And that's what an episode like Coming Home is about, in some sense, and other episodes even more pointedly when it's more about the Gundam. And it's a fascinating thing to see unfold in this show.
Yeah.
And so I thought that put a good point on it, so I wanted to read that.
Yeah, because it also makes me think about, like, one like a repeated piece of symbolism in Coming Home is the wooden puppet doll that was Amuro's toy that has been left at home, which is, like, that's, you know, what the Gundam itself is this artificial representation of the human body in, like, this indestructible form that you can move around, and you can imagine Amuro as a small kid playing around with this little wooden puppet thingy, and then eventually, like, he was doing with that puppet as a child is what if he was, like, you know, play fighting with it and stuff like that, is what he's actually doing now, quite literally, with the Gundam in actual warfare. And so, yeah, like, I think Gundam as a show is constantly, like, aware, and again, like, specifically this show of Mobile Suit Gundam, because other Gundam shows in the future are not as good about this. I mean, almost none of them are as good at this as Mobile Suit Gundam is, but of being aware of this struggle of feeling empowered by these things, but also being horrified by them, and that, like, trying to figure out, like, what that means for us as people, which is complicated. There's no, like, easy answer to that, but the show, like, just looks at that, like, really complicated feeling and just fucking dives right into it and just messes around in there for as long as it can.
All right. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it for today.
Yep.
The book I was reading out of, by the way, is Starting Point by Miyazaki. It's available in English in hardcover and paperback. I have both copies here because I use one for notes and I use one for reading. I was reading on pages 45 and I think 21. Just wanted to cite that because that's the academic in me. But yes, Sean, do you want to tell the people what our episode list is for next time?
Yes, so for part 3 of Weekly Suit Gundam, we are going to be watching episodes 14 to 25. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of our new friend Ramba Rao. We're heading towards the Battle of Odessa, and we'll find out what that is. And there's a lot of good stuff ahead. There's an additional note that needs to be made for listeners. There will be a fun, interesting thing we'll get to dive into next time, because episode 15 of Mobile Suit Gundam has never been officially released in any Western media for interesting reasons.
It's on the Blu-ray.
No, it is not. It is accessible through some other things that online, and may have been wrapped up into torrents and things like that.
Oh.
But it is not directly. It's not on the Blu-ray. It's not on the DVD releases. Yes,
Okay.
There's only 42 episodes of Mobile Suit Gundam if you have officially bought any Gundam releases. So it is episode 15 is very easily accessible online. Like you can, I think it's even on YouTube if viewers want to find it that way. So if you have bought the Blu-rays or have the DVDs, you need to go find episode 15 somewhere else. But we will be talking about episode 15, Kukuru's Doan's Island. Yes, so it's interesting why it's not. There's no. It's because the episode is like kind of one of the weaker episodes of Gundam, but I still like it a lot. It's not like there's some racist thing or something like that in it that it got cut. But yes, we will dive into what is going on with episode 15 along with all those other episodes from 14 to 25. So, because if you are just watching on the the physical Blu-rays, episode 25 for you will be different than episode 25 for us. So that's why that's important to point out. Is this is the list of all 43 episodes of Gundam. We're doing 14 to 25.
Excellent. We'll see you guys next time.
Will you be able to survive?